and welcome to the Keys to Therapy. Today's episode is going to be 5 things that I wish I knew when I was a new therapist. So I graduated in 2012. It's now 2025 as I record this. So I've been a therapist for a while, and I wanted to just share a couple quick hitting, easy to digest tips on things that I wish I know or knew back then, now that I've reflected a lot. And creating this channel and going through so many different topics, I realize there's a lot that most people don't know when they enter grad school, when they go through their internships, when they get out of school and enter this field. So I wanted to give you just 5 quick ones that are takeaways, and I have episodes on a lot of these things if you wanted to deep dive into them, but let's go. So my number one thing that I really wish that I knew when I was a new therapist is that you don't need to know everything. I feel like as the therapist, there's this pressure almost to be this like all-knowing being. You want to have the answers for your clients. You want to be able to know what you're saying. You want to prove something to them, that they should trust you, that you know what you're talking about, that you're worth paying for, whatever the things are. And whatever those things, those thoughts and stuff that just kind of eats at you when you're new and you have some of that imposter syndrome. You really want to seem like the absolute expert in the room and you know what you're talking about. And that sometimes adds a lot of extra pressure on you of being able to know everything and have answers for everything. But as a new therapist, you do not need to know everything. It's okay to ask questions about things. It's okay to say that, you know, whatever was taught to you or whatever's going on in your internship or in supervision wasn't clear and you need more clarification, to ask for information on new resources or things to increase your knowledge base. I think sometimes there's also this expectation that when you've graduated, like, great, you've got your degree, you got 2 degrees now, you've got this whole foundation, you got this provisional license, you should know what you're doing. And now you're just working on your hours to get your full license and you're good to go. But I think that there is still such a learning curve, not only when you're a new therapist, like associate or resident or whatever you call it or they call it in your state, but honestly, once you get that license, it's almost scarier once you get the full license, because then you're like, oh, they're really going to expect me to know everything. I'm really on my own right now. I am working really independently. And sometimes I've noticed for people, the anxiety gets higher actually once they've gotten the full license. So just know you do not need to know everything. You will never know everything, even when you've been in the field a long time. And use that period of time when you've graduated, those first few years out of school, first few years licensed, to really try to expand your knowledge base and get trainings that you want. Talk to people about what they've been trained in. Watch some of the episodes that I have on people who have EMDR training or work with special populations and see if that sounds like something that would be worth investing for you. I think you have to let go of some of that pressure of needing to know everything and say like, hey, I'm in a constant state of learning. There are things I feel more confident about and I do know, but there's things that I don't yet, and that's okay. So keep that in mind. It's okay. You're not supposed to know everything. Even years in, there's still sometimes that clients will say something, whether it's about the job that they have or a new slang word or a term that they've heard or whatever. They have to be like, oh, well, tell me more about that. And you just ask them instead of acting like you know what's happening or, you know, feeling like a deer in headlights. So you won't know everything. That's okay. I think it makes us more human. So lean into that. It's fine. Number 2, good supervision is key to you becoming a good therapist. So when you're getting out of school and you're trying to find a job, sometimes they will be able to provide you supervision on the job, and that's great if the supervision's great. That period of time when you're getting your hours and you're meeting with your supervisor weekly is so big. You need a person, a space to be able to say, hey, here's a case that triggered me this week. Here's something I thought I knew about and I didn't actually know in the moment. Or here's this thing I said to this client that like I can't stop thinking about. And now I'm really anxious if they're going to come back or not. I'm scared about my test and if I'm going to pass it and what that means. Like any of those things that are very, very vulnerable topics. I think sometimes people think of supervision as like a checkup or like a grade. Like, oh my gosh, I have to go in. I have to prove what I know. I have to get a good grade. They're going to be checking in to make sure that I know what I'm talking about. And I got to like prove that I'm good. And they'll sign off on my paperwork. But the reality is, supervision should be almost like a mini version of therapy for you. Like, it should be a place where you're able to identify what your triggers are. You're able to be vulnerable. You're able to talk about the stuff that's hard, that's maybe impacting your work, or that you're worried will impact your work. Sometimes you might need to be talking about certain life things that are going on and coming up for you. And how do you navigate that with clients? You know, maybe you're going through some grief and you want to be able to open up to your supervisor about how do you show up for work when you've got big life stuff going on. So that relationship is really important. Like I said, you almost have to think of it like a therapeutic relationship. Yes, they're not your therapist, but you're going to be really vulnerable and emotional with them, and they need to provide that safe space for you. Now, there's a lot of bad supervisors out here. I'm talking bad. So I've heard horror stories. I've seen horror stories, and I've lived through one in particular personally when I was an intern, where I ended up having to report my supervisor to the licensing board and the school for things. I did a podcast on it. It's a whole thing. I can link that below. But I think that there's a lot of people out here who are in this field for the wrong reasons. So it's extra important that you are picking a supervisor who's aligned with you. Like, they are somebody who maybe they are in a place in their career that you want to be at eventually. Maybe they have trainings that you're interested in. Maybe personality wise, you guys blend really well. Maybe you want somebody who's a lot older than you so that you can have more of that mentor relationship. Maybe you want somebody who's closer in age because that feels a little more relatable for you. Like, there's a wide spectrum, but you also want to make sure that the person that you are entrusting with not only that vulnerability of your emotions, but also the financial component of supervision and the contract component. You need to know that this person is sane and they are able to fulfill their duties. So I've heard a lot of stories of supervisors not signing off on hours because they're mad at their supervisee. Or if the supervisee is switching jobs, they hold up their paperwork for weeks or months, or just flat out refuse to sign it and never give it back and like cut contact off with their supervisee. So I would say, like, not only do you need to make sure that your supervision relationship is really solid, I would also say, because I'm sure some of these people thought their relationship was solid and it later wasn't, make sure, however you're logging your hours, you are getting those signed weekly. Even if it's not required that you do, or you have to create your own form to get that done, I would do that. Because the amount of people that I personally know and have seen in some of these Facebook groups posting, the therapy ones, about their past supervisor holding their hours hostage is actually insane and should be criminal. It's bad. So I don't want to scare you all, but I'm real on this channel and I'm telling you like what actually happens in this field. So if you feel like the supervisor that is at the job that you have, maybe it's included in supervision, it feels like a good deal, but you don't align with them, you don't really trust them, you're getting bad vibes from them, it may be worth it to find somebody that you have to pay out of pocket for. And in order to secure those hours, to have the best of that relationship and be able to just make the most of supervision in general through the process as you're becoming a full-blown therapist. So really, really heavily consider that. I was lucky that when I was getting my hours, my supervisor was amazing. She was so nice and kind and listened well, and I just loved her as a person. So I think that I got really lucky with that, but I don't hear of that as often as I hear of the negative. So be really careful and choose wisely. Now, number 3, which kind of goes along with those, is don't be afraid to change jobs if you need to. I think a lot of times, especially when you first graduate, everyone's just like they feel like so lucky to get a job. They feel so happy to have somewhere that they can start using these skills and they can build up their clientele, and they can get this experience they've read about or started doing in school or whatever else. But if the job isn't working for you, do not be scared to change it if you need to, midway through your hours if you have to, or the second you are done with your hours, if the place is just like not fitting what you need, or things are just not going well and the job is no longer aligned with you. Maybe there's pay issues, maybe there's coworker issues, maybe there's staff issues, facility issues, you don't feel safe, like whatever the thing is. Don't be scared to change jobs if you need to. And maybe not even during like the provisional part, maybe even once you're fully licensed, I would say. If something doesn't feel like it's working with you, change. So I've changed jobs a couple times, and eventually none of them felt like they were really what I needed or wanted. So I created my own private practice. Now I made my own job. So I think that it's really helpful to understand that it's okay to be flexible with what it is that you need, and that switching jobs is sometimes a necessity. Also, sometimes you may max out the amount of experience or benefits that you could get at a place, and you need to change jobs to grow. That's not a bad thing, but don't be scared of that if you feel like that's something that you need. Now, number 4, you are going to hear a lot of therapists talking about like, what's your niche? What's your niche? Whatever. They'll be wanting to know, who do you work with? What are your people? Or who are your people? What is your training background? Whatever. So I think sometimes therapists sort of feel boxed into that early in their career if that's something that they're being asked a lot, because you might not know, or you might be open to different types of people and you're trying to explore. That's okay if for a while you're more of a generalist. I know some people who that's their entire practice and they're thriving. They never pick a niche. Okay, live your best life. Like if that's what excites them and that's they're getting clients that way and that's how they want to run their business or the place that they work at, that's how they want to accept people, and that's totally fine if it's working for them. So it's okay if you don't ever have a niche, but it's also okay if in the beginning that is not something that you are locked into. So somebody that I've mentored as a new therapist, shout out, but they're currently in grad school. And they asked, like, well, everybody's saying in school, like, you have to identify what's your modality. Like, what modality are you using? Pretty much, literally, nobody's ever going to ask you that once you graduate. And why tie yourself to one specific type? So I think sometimes school tries to box you in, intentionally or not. Maybe it's for an assignment. Maybe it's everybody's learning and they're like, well, I like solution focused short-term therapy. And somebody's like, well, I like psychodynamic and whatever, who cares? Like if that's something people want to identify themselves by, that's fine. If it's by a certain population, like I only like working with children. Okay, then go work with kids because I don't. So have fun. But I think that it's something that you have to be mindful of, that's going to create some extra pressure for you to be like, well, let me box myself. What is like the modality that I use? What is the population that I work with? What's like my dream setting? And it's okay if you don't know all of that. You might not know that for years. I did not know that for like a decade, basically. So, and I just wanted to get tons of experience. And it was funny because once I switched jobs and moved after I got licensed, I ended up living in an area that was heavily populated by military. And I had a license from another state, so I was able to work on base without having to be licensed in Virginia because I already had a North Carolina license. So government jobs work a little bit different. But I ended up working with the military. I didn't have like any experience with them. But now that's one of my niches. Like I love working with that population. I learned so much being on base. Whole different language, customs, culture, everything. Documentation's different, expectations, HIPAA, everything was different. And I would never have picked that right off the bat. I would never have thought that that would be a population that I would want to work with because I just didn't have any ties to them necessarily. But yeah, there you go. Like I worked with them and I was like, this is actually really good. I really like the people. I really like how motivated some of them are. I like some of the resources that they had available that I never had clients with that many resources. So yeah, it ended up being something great. And I still work with them now. And I've been since 2015. So now it's been 10 years I've worked with the military. So I think that that's being open is what led me to that. And now this whole other world opened up for me for who I work with. So be open to that, get trainings, explore different things. Um, don't feel like you have to lock yourself into one specific niche, population, modality, whatever. Be flexible. And the fifth one is build your network early. So if you're in grad school, make really good connections with your classmates, even with some of your professors. Be able to, in your next job, if possible, like get closer with some coworkers, learn from supervisors, learn from any and everybody that you can, and really build that community. And any future job you have, any conferences you go to, any trainings you go to, really try to connect with other people. And there's a few reasons behind that. One is, like I was saying for the first point, we're not going to know everything. You are going to need people in your community who know the things that you don't know. So you want a mix of people that you can learn from. And you also want people who just work with different people or populations or settings that you don't. You also want to be able to find some people who are maybe at the same stage as you. So that way you feel less alone or less in your head about everything that's going on. You've got people to vent to and talk to and bounce ideas off of, or ask questions about things like, oh, did you submit your paperwork for licensure? How long did it take them to get back to you for that? Like things like that, studying for the exams together, whatever it's going to be. You want to build a community for personal reasons and professional reasons. So some jobs are going to be a little more solo, or you may be like embedded in a place that there's not a lot of therapists, or you may be like in a private practice sometimes. Like when I worked at a group private practice, I rarely saw any of my coworkers, maybe in the bathroom for 2 seconds. Possibly like if we both had sessions at the same time, but we got there a little early, I'd be able to talk to somebody for a few minutes. Like in some of those settings, you really don't get to connect with the other people as much. So I went out of my way to ask some of them to lunch, to hang out, to build those relationships. So that way it was like, not only can I learn more about who they are, that's also, and then maybe have somebody to vent to about things that were going on, but also then did somebody to refer to if I get a client that they really need their kid to be in therapy too, and I don't see kids, then I could refer them or their kid to somebody else there while I see them. So there was lots of different, there was room there. And it ended up being really a positive experience in that regard. And same with other jobs. When I worked with the military, there would be somebody who really needed, a specific type of like heavy duty trauma training. So, and at that point I wasn't trained in some of the things. So I would send somebody for EMDR and they would go see that person for a few sessions and then they'd come back to me. So you want to build that network. But like I said, personally and professionally, and also this job is kind of crazy. We sit and talk to people for hours and hours a day. We hear really traumatic stories. We are constantly working our brains to analyze things, go through the person's history, apply techniques, like a lot of work. And sometimes other people don't get that. They just don't understand. Or they'll see like, oh, you work 25 hours a week. Oh, it must be so nice to work part-time. It's like, that's full-time for therapists. Like, that's a lot of work. So imagine being in 25 meetings where you can't get up and go to the bathroom or eat or anything. Like, it's a lot. So you want to have people that can just kind of help support you through everything, and you support them too. Whether it's venting, whether it's like going to CE trainings together, whether it's career development, all of that. You want to be able to build that network. And the sooner you do it, the better off you're going to be. So I went to grad school here in Charlotte, and when I moved back here 3 years ago, I'd been gone like 7 years or so. But when I came back, because I'd had good relationships and good like impressions and whatever else, connections with people in grad school, I was able to reach out to a few people that I hadn't seen in years. At that point, 10 years for some of them since I'd graduated or we graduated. And I was able to connect with a couple of them and get some info on building a business in North Carolina and places I should check out, and what are some of the trends that they're seeing and stuff like that, which ended up being really, really helpful and nice because now I know who to refer people to. And I have a couple times referred to both of them that I'm thinking of in my head, actually. So yeah, make sure that you're building those networks early because it can be kind of a lonely profession sometimes. So building that's going to help you, like I said, personally and professionally. So those are the top 5 things. There's probably hundreds, but those are the top 5 that I think could be really helpful for new therapists to know and to start implementing sooner than later. So I hope that that was really helpful for you and that you can start working on some of those today. So if you've found any of those things to be helpful, or you want to share some examples of how you're working on them below, then definitely comment. So I want to see what you all are doing out here. But subscribe to my channel so I can keep doing these for you all. And let me know if you need anything. I will see you next time. Thanks.